Shabbat Shalom. ותשחט הארץ לבני האלוהים ותמלא הארץ חמס. This is one of the opening verses of the Torah portion this Shabbat. It means the earth was corrupt before God and the earth was filled with Hamas, violence and lawlessness. By the way, the consensus over time of the translation of the word Hamas in the Torah is lawlessness, and it has absolutely nothing to do with a murderous terrorist group that we find ourselves enthralled with. It's actually a coincidence that they use an acronym in Arabic that has the same sound. But for us, Hamas means lawlessness. And what does the Torah mean by lawlessness? What does it mean that the world was so immersed in lawlessness that God had to destroy the world because there was no turning back from it? So let me describe, according to Rashi, what lawlessness means. And there's an example in the Jewish tradition that's a perfect example to describe this. Picture a person walking down the marketplace, and this person has a basket of grapes in his back. As he's walking down, people from behind him start taking one grape each. By the time he gets to the bottom of the hill in the marketplace, he has no more grapes. Who took them? Everyone did. Everyone took one grape. So when he got to the bottom, he had no grapes left. And who was he going to blame? Who do you sue? Who do you take to the police? The entire marketplace? That is lawlessness. When we engage in little acts of disobedience or rebellion or theft that eventually escalate into something that you cannot reverse. That's what was happening in the world according to our sages, and that's why God destroyed the world. God slowly but surely watched the world deteriorate. Now, this is a very powerful message for the time in which we live. A society collapses when it can no longer distinguish right from wrong. A society collapses when it can no longer distinguish zeal for morality. And our time really echoes this. In the world in which we live, dear friends, ideological certainty masquerades as virtue. We all believe that our certainty, our truth is the only truth. And so truth starts becoming tribal. And this group has their truth, and that group has their truth, and the other group has their truth. And slowly and surely, it all deteriorates until we can no longer talk to one another. This is almost like moral lawlessness. We all believe what we believe, and the person next to us can take a hike. By the way, God chooses Noah to survive the flood. And he's chosen not because he's, like Lila explained, the most righteous person in the world. He was the best God had. And sometimes that's what has to do. But Noah's life is a reflection of Jewish history. Make no mistake. God tells him the world's going to be destroyed. You're going to survive, barely. Take your family. Take the animals. And what does Noah do? He doesn't try to seek converts. He doesn't try to convince everyone the world is ending. He gets to work. He builds the ark. He devotes himself to this really holy task. And in the end, he finds himself isolated from humanity. Because he's the last person standing with some sense of morality. Why do I say this is a reflection of our history? Because when the world hits moral low, we as Jews stand alone always. This has been true for 2,000 years. Now, that doesn't mean that we should feel comfortable when the world hits a low. But explains a little bit of that question, why do people hate us? Because people cannot stand tall for his or her own morality, for believing in themselves, for knowing that what we're doing is righteous and true. Can you imagine when Noah saved himself, what people around him were saying? Yet, holiness always begins with isolation. And we build these arks not as seclusion, but as a refuge that provides some structure in our lives. The Jewish community is an ark. It's a modern-day teva. Look, after October 7th, we all know this, people started coming out of the woodwork to join back into the Jewish fold. Why? Because they felt lonely. Something that happened here locally in Las Vegas, and it's not something I want to brag about, but one of my own children started a group for young Jewish adults in their mid-20s, early 30s. And something that no synagogue or the organized community was ever able to do, he is able to bring kids in the hundreds to Shabbat dinners, an activity called Juice and Brews. And I'm super proud, because people that age are now discovering that you cannot be Jewish in a vacuum. That if you really are going to be Jewish, you have two options: to stand alone and die on your sword of morality, or to share who you are with others who are like you. And surely and tragically, history is showing us that that's happening again. I want to share with you something that happened this week in the Jewish world, and I'm sure that not all of you read Jewish publications every day like I do. This made national headlines. And I have to say that I'm proudly telling you I had a hand in this. About a month ago, a friend of mine, Rabbi Jeremy Barras from Miami, reached out to me telling me he's trying to form a group of 30 or so rabbis across denominations and cities who can work together with the Israeli Foreign Ministry in teaching the Israeli Foreign Ministry how to actually stand tall to anti-Semites outside of Israel. Because if you've been watching the story, we're very good at fighting, but we're not so good at social media. And so I said, yes, count me in. And sooner than I knew it, he had enlisted the Israeli Foreign Minister. We had a meeting online. It was incredible. And a really bright young man, Jonathan Schulman, who used to work for AIPAC with the Rabbinic Initiative, who now leads a group called the Jewish Majority that actually tries to launch initiatives in the media, is actually working with us too. And Jonathan said, you know, we have an opportunity in what's happening in New York with the so-called Mamdani election. And if you missed this, last week in New York City, two very prominent rabbis, Rabbi Elliot Cosgrove from Park Avenue Synagogue, the conservative rabbi, and Rabbi Amiel Hirsch from the Stephen S. Wise Free Synagogue, a Reform synagogue, both gave tremendously powerful sermons as to why the election of Mamdani is a danger to the entire Jewish people. And here's the most important thing about this. No time that I can remember before have rabbis actively from the pulpit endorsed political candidates. We're now cleared by the IRS to do that, by the way. But the majority of us will still refrain from doing it. But the situation in New York reached such a crescendo that these two rabbis decided to do it. And it created controversy. By the way, the most incredible controversy, right? Christians do this all the time, even without the IRS permission. They endorse whomever the hell they want. We as Jews, we have to be careful. We have to be not on my time, not on my watch. I'm not going to endorse anybody. The time's over for that. If we don't watch out for our own survival, we won't be here tomorrow. So they spoke their mind. And the most incredible thing happened. We put out a letter asking rabbis across the country to support Rabbi Cosgrove and Rabbi Hirsch in their words and explaining what Mamdani is such a clear and present danger to us. And these rabbinic letters usually get 300 signatures, 150 signatures. As of yesterday, we were over 1,000 signatures. Rabbis from all across the United States, from every theological persuasion, political inclination, left, right, middle, everywhere. And we all sign because we all recognize that this is a moment of truth. But here's the problem. Because of the triviality that I spoke about, we have all of these useful idiots from within our own people that still refuse to understand Jewish history and still refuse to see that if we don't speak out and stop playing footsie with the anti-Semites, history will not look kindly upon us. There's an incredible book called Hitler's Jews. Came out about 5 years ago. Talks about all of those Jews at the beginning of Nazi Germany who believed that if they aligned themselves with the Reich, nothing would happen to them. Who believed that because they had money, or they believed like Hitler, or if they joined the army, nothing would happen to them. All of these Mandani useful idiots need to read and learn Jewish history, because tomorrow, when he shows his true colors, when he goes back to globalizing the Intifada and screaming from the river to the sea, these useful idiots will be as Jewish as you and me. Our safety, our values are not going to be defended by shouting louder. You know, there's a midrash that says that the difference between Noah and the people around him is that God identified in him somebody capable of working. The flood lasted for 40 days and 40 nights, but according to our sages, Noah was in the ark for an entire year. And he woke up every day, woke up in the middle of the night, and cleared the poop and the other stuff in the ark, and fed the animals, and worked himself to exhaustion so we could survive. Our story parallels the story of Noah. It is time to get to work. The time from watching from the sidelines needs to be over. And right now, by the way, I'm telling you, we are too late. This is going to happen. I remember the days when I started going to the AIPAC policy conferences. And I kept asking my wife, Liz, I said, what's going to happen when people in this country discover that they can do the same we do? That they can lobby Congress? When Muslims discover that they can lobby Congress, what's going to happen? They're more than us. Well, it's happening. If you paid attention to the story about lawlessness and the grapes, look at what's happening in our country. And please, this is my eternal plea. Do not let your political affiliation be greater than your peoplehood. Whether you're a Republican, a Democrat, and whatever you are, you're Jewish first. And listen to this. On both sides, we have calamity happening. Did you know this week somebody was put forth for Senate confirmation to be the ambassador of the United States in Kuwait, who called Jews monkeys in his social media, who actually said Saddam Hussein was a martyr? Imagine this guy being the ambassador in Kuwait when we went to war to liberate Kuwait from Saddam Hussein. And then, when people question him, well, it was in my past, I disavowed everything, I said, no. We need to remember all of this. And on the other side, we have Graham Plattner running for the Senate, endorsed by, of course, Bernie Sanders, the most amazing self-hating Jew of all times. This guy has a Nazi tattoo in his chest. No, I didn't know what it meant. I got it in Croatia. We are being attacked on both sides. We need to wake up. Your voter registration card is not going to save you. Act as Jews. This is lawlessness. One from here, one from there, one from there. This is how it starts. Mamdani in New York is going to give license to all of these like-minded people who hate us to run for office all over the United States. And suddenly it's not going to be the squad of three. Oh, it's just 3 people. And that poisonous snake, Rashidat Laiv, is going to be beyond that. And our children who march with the Palestinians on the streets screaming these horrible things are going to learn the hard way what it means to be Jewish. What do? We keep on doing what Noah did. We work day and night. We keep singing Olam Chesed Yivaneh, which is the voice of the psalmist. We will build a world in kindness and in love. We cannot become like our enemies. And that's why, even though a lot of us do not agree with the truce and the ceasefire, there needs to be one. Because at some point we have to get to the business of rebuilding the world with kindness. Look at the Tower of Babel. What was the worst thing that happened when a brick fell? They all cried. When a human being fell from the scaffold, nobody cared. Their ideology was more important than people. Hamas, the extreme right, the extreme left, Nazi tattoos, Jews are like monkeys, unashamed, unabashed of saying and doing these things. That's when your ideology becomes greater than people. There is a tremendous parallel between Noah and that story and our generation. So when the waters rise again, in propaganda, in hatred, in moral confusion, remember what Noah did. He didn't curse the flood, he built an ark. And I have a prediction for you. All of those years of suffering because we couldn't figure out how to bring people to build community, the Jewish community is going to make a comeback. Organized religion will make a comeback. Because we all need the structure. This is where we come to weather the storm, because there will be a storm. And I hate to be that pessimistic guy, but it's already happening in New York. The largest Jewish population in the world is in New York. Not in Tel Aviv, not in Jerusalem, not in Haifa, in New York. And this is happening. At the end of the flood, we see the rainbow. When the Rambam, Maimonides, says there's a reason for the rainbow. It's not just any symbol. The rainbow is like the bow of a fighter upside down. It's God saying, I will never destroy the world again. If you destroy the world, it will be by your own hand. And that's why every time we see the rainbow, we recite a blessing, blessing God for remembering the covenant. The problem is not God. The problem is ourselves. May we, the descendants of those people who have survived so many floods in history, remain builders of justice, builders of truth, firm, disciplined, and most importantly, unafraid. Because what's about to happen, it's not going to be easy to watch. We need to participate and not just remain in the sidelines. Shabbat Shalom u'mevorach. Let us please rise, page 148, the Chatzi Kaddish for Musaf. I don't know, never.
Yitgadal v'yikadash shemei Rabba ve'alma divra knutei ve'amlik malchutei v'chayechon v'yamechon v'chay l'chol beit Yisrael bagala uvizman kari v'imru Amen Yehi shmei Rabba mevarach ve'alam ulal me'al maya יתברך וישתבח ויתפאר ויתרומם וינשא ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתהלל לשם קדושה בריחו לעילא מן כה ברכתה ושירתה תושבחתה ונחמתה דאמירן בעלמא ואמרו אמן.